Ayman Khan here for Seconds Out with Nappa in Turkey. Nappa, before I get into the topic of conversation, of a question that's been bugging me, it's been on my mind for ever since I heard your name. Is your name Nappa because of Nappa from Dragon Ball Z?
No. My name Nappa came from when I was year 8 or year 9 in school, and it actually, if I'd be 100% transparent, doesn't have any sense. You know, it's a name that I gave myself at 13 years old. It stuck with me until an adult, but it was also my rap name. I just liked the name. I wanted to be called Dapper.
Right.
There was someone already called Dapper in my school, so then I called myself Nappa. But then, yeah, that's what it is.
Not a Dragon Ball Z fan?
No, but obviously I saw the character after, muscular,
Yeah.
explosive guy, so I thought, yeah, I could run with that sometimes, but it'd be a lie.
No, fair enough. Well then, let's get into the boxing conversation. Obviously the big news surrounding yourself would be that Chris Eubank Jr has now locked in, signed, sealed, to be delivered, that rematch with Conor Benn. Is that the route that you wanted to go?
Yeah, we agree. We signed a 2-fight deal. We still got some stuff to figure out, some small minor details, but yeah, the fight we'll be having next is Conor Benn.
When you say those small minor details, do they include the rehydration clause, those elements to the fight which a lot of people have concern of, as we talked about in the build-up to the first fight?
Yeah, that's one of them, yeah. Yeah, that's one of them.
So from your point of view, as much as you can say, what is it you want about that to be changed or altered in any way?
As executive director of Noble Sport, it's our duty to make sure we negotiate a deal for Chris that makes the best sense for him in terms of financially and his health. So that's what we'll be doing when we go over the small print to make sure that it's not putting him in any danger. It makes sense for the fight. And at the end of the day, we want him to come out victorious. We want him to put a show just like he did last time. You know, he did. I personally didn't want him to agree to the rehydration clause, but he was more than confident that no matter what, he will come away with a victory, which he did. But going into the second one, now that we've won the first one, it's just got to make a little bit more sense for Chris.
Do you get the sense that the other side are receptive or open to having that conversation, or are they locked into the terms as the way they were the first time?
I don't know their contract, they don't know our contract, but if I managed Conor Benn, I'd want Chris to have a rehydration clause, so I fully understand their point of view, or as far as they're concerned, it's the same. But obviously we have some stuff in our contract that they don't have. They don't have a rehydration clause, they don't have all of this other stuff, so their contract will be a lot more simple than Chris's contract. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. The other point of view is that it's been announced for London, but you would think that if it was a rematch, it would be at the same spot before Tottenham. Is there any discussion as to whether that fight might take place in a location other than Tottenham?
To my knowledge, we're not sure where it's going to be yet, but I'm sure it'll be at one of the massive stadiums in the UK.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, so the other thing that came up was in an IFL interview with Eddie Hearn, is that Eddie had mentioned that Chris Eubank Jr wasn't in a promotional deal with Boxer and Ben Shalom. I saw that you put that tweet out. What had Eddie understood and heard that was the relationship between Chris and Boxer?
We just wanted to make it very clear that Chris and Noble Sport make the decisions in his career, and Chris is not signed to anyone as a promoter. Chris does not have a promoter, but Chris is in a partnership with Boxer, a partnership that's going very well, a partnership that he's had 2 fights with now, 2 wins, one by KO, one on points, one in Saudi Arabia, the other one in Tottenham Football Stadium against Conor Benn. So the partnership's going great. Got no complaints about the partnership, but we just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, outside of those technical questions, what's your expectations for how Eubank Jr deals with Conor Benn the second time round?
I think he'll win in better fashion. But listen, Conor Benn's a good fighter. He put up a better fight than I personally thought he would. But listen, you know, he's a Ben, just like his dad. He's explosive, he's got heart. So it's not an easy fight, but it's not a fight I believe Chris will lose any day of the week.
Have you had any conversations with Eubank Sr, who is adamant that, well, the first time around that the fight wouldn't happen, but he turned up on the night, but said as much as he wanted to see his son retire from the sport, even said jokingly that he would return to the ring if Eubank Jr decided to return to the ring. But has that conversation taken place with Senior?
Not with me, no. Senior says quite a lot of things, but At the end of the day, that's just Chris's dad. That is a guy that a lot of us that know the sport learn a lot from. So I don't really comment too much about what he says, what he doesn't say, and the rest of it. You know, Chris is one of my best friends. Senior's his dad, and that's all there is to it, really. Whatever he says is fine. I don't mind. He's not going to the fight. The fight shouldn't happen. The rest of it, I don't have a comment. It's my friend's dad.
Promotionally, look, of course, there's no denying that the fight has a lot of momentum and would still get lots of eyeballs and spotlight on the fight. But a large part of it was the relationship between Eubank Jr. and Senior. That's now been established. That's now been rectified. He's there. Do you think the fight will still have the steam that it had the second time around, that it did the first time around? Because that trick isn't there anymore. Not that it was a trick, but you get what I mean.
Since Eubank Sr. fought Conor Benn, could you name me 3 fights in the UK with 2 British fighters that has been as big or as exciting as that one? I can't think of one, can you?
No, I get exactly what you're saying, but my point is that a large part of the build-up was the relationship between Eubank Jr. and Senior, but that won't be one of the topics of discussion the second time around. But a large part of it was sold on whether Eubank Senior would be there or not, alongside the fight too.
Yeah, but still it's a massive fight. Mm-hmm. I can't, okay, tell me 2 fights bigger than that in the UK right now.
Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua.
Yeah.
Tyson Fury versus Daniel Dubois. AJ Dubois.
Tyson Fury, Daniel Dubois is not bigger than Eubank Benn.
I would say not now. I agree with you. The rematch with Dubois and Joshua.
No, it's not. No one's asking for that. Everyone wants AJ to fight Fury.
That's one of the fights that I mentioned. But
yeah, that's the only fight. So if you're saying it's first or second biggest fight, then definitely you want to see it again. You know, and you're struggling to give me bigger fights.
And they're heavyweights as well too. No, again, I'm not denying that the fight has huge momentum or anything like that. But I just wondered promotionally how the fight is sold upon alongside just the fight, because the fight had the selling point of Eubank Sr. the first time round.
I'd say the biggest 4 fighters in the UK is AJ, Fury, Junior and Conor Benn. Mm-hmm. If Junior and Conor Benn don't fight each other, what fights could they have that's bigger than them 2 fighting each other? Eubank Canelo, public, is that as bigger than the Conor Benn fight right this moment? I don't know, plus he's got to fight Crawford anyway. Mm-hmm. And most of the guys at 147 didn't have a great performance in New York, so what fight is Conor Benn going to have that's bigger than a Chris Eubank Jr. fight right now? I can't think of one. Domestically, there's none. Mm-hmm. Josh Kelly's not bigger, Echo Usman's not bigger than the Eubank fight. What's his name? Lewis Crocker. None of these fights are bigger than the Eubank fight. Josh Taylor's not bigger. Catterall's not bigger. If you go to the USA, yes, there's a few fights. There's a few big names in USA like Teofimo or like Ryan Garcia, but the public's not demanding it. No one's really asking for it. It's the biggest fight for both guys. That's why we're seeing it again. And I haven't seen any negative press about people hearing them 2 fighting again. So let's get on.
What's your anticipation for pay-per-view buys off the back of the first one?
I think it'll do well again because it lived. Like loads of these fights that happen, like Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, like Canelo. When he was unifying 168, those of these fights don't live up to the hype, Mm-hmm. This fight lived up to the hype. This fight, a lot of people was like, oh, they're just going off their dad's name and the rest of it. But come fight night, Chris threw over 100 punches throughout in each round of 10, 11, and 12. Conor Benn stood up to it and was fighting back. It was an amazing fight. It'll probably win fight of the year, potentially. There's no reason why it's not worth seeing it again.
Nappa, taking off, of course, your working relationship with Eubank Jr. and as a friend of Eubank Jr., the first time around, Eubank Jr. went on to WCO podcast and he revealed kind of what happened to him in the aftermath of the fight and being in hospital and things. How worried were you in the aftermath, and going into the second fight, how worried will you be until, of course, everything is clear with him?
Yeah, you were that. First of all, we want to know whether is he hurt? Did he take wrongful punishment? And then we found out it was not that, it was just that he was severely dehydrated, and we just knew that rehydration was, it's not the greatest idea in the world, but the person that agreed to it was the man himself, because he wanted to give the public the fight that they were all asking for at the time. So, you know, he did that for his fans, he did that for the British boxing, he did that for his legacy, he did it to make a name for himself in the UK, to be remembered. Going into the second one, as I said, myself and my partners at Nova Sport are going to do our best to negotiate a deal that makes sense, we believe, for Junior.
Moving on to Tevin Farmer at the weekend, unsuccessful effort against Floyd Schofield. What for the future of Tevin off the back of that defeat?
So our contract actually ended with Tevin in May, but Tevin is someone that I have high respect for. I was rooting for him to win. Schofield actually fought my other fighter, Renee Tellez-Giron, in the fight before, who Tevin was a lot more experienced. Obviously, the Mexican fighters are tough, rugged and stuff. So it's a fight I thought he would win. But if I was representing Tevin still, I don't think I would have took that fight. For Floyd Schofield, I don't like the fact of Tevin being used like a gatekeeper, although some of them may act like that's what he is. You know, when he took the fights against Moritalo and Zepeda, the aim was to win and move on to bigger and better things. I feel like the Schofield fight was definitely like, you know, it's a test for Schofield to test himself against a fighter like Tevin Farmer, and I believe that a fighter that relies on amazing defense due to his world-class footwork and reflexes in his 30s against a young, explosive 22-year-old, the styles was in the favour of Schofield, but you know, I didn't speak to Tevin about why he took it and the rest of it, so you know, I wasn't happy when I saw the result, but I just hope that he comes back again. Maybe we'll work again in the future. I'm going to reach out to him soon and see what can be done, but yeah, I think he should have been a bit more cute with his matchmaking.
Nappa, much appreciated. Thanks for being the second out, sir.
You got the best.